This is Tomu, the open mic, Unfiltered. This is part 1 of episode 3, treatment. This is the story of my first real ride with ADHD medication, specifically a wild, unpredictable, and often sweaty 50-day journey with Medanfetamine. Now, if you ever wondered what it's like to test a fast-acting stimulant while managing a chaotic brain, spiraling thoughts, and health anxiety, and the full spectrum of human emotion on a daily basis, buckle up. This one's going to be messy and also kind of beautiful. Because even though it broke me down some days, this journey gave me something I never had before: insight into myself, my patterns, and my limits. So let's rewind the tape. Day 1, 5 milligram. I remember taking that tiny tablet and waiting. It was like sitting in front of a stage before a show starts, lights down, anticipation high. And then something happened. My brain went quiet. I'm not exaggerating when I say I felt peace, like actual, tangible mental peace. I was in conversations, not just surviving them. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't forget what I was going to say. I wasn't desperately chasing every new thought like it owed me money. I remember sitting at my kitchen table and noticing for the first time that I could remember. My mind wasn't racing ahead of itself. It wasn't playing 20 tabs at once. It was like someone hit the mute button on the chaos. I was in the moment. It was bliss, short-lived bliss, but it was real. But like everything, what goes up must come down. By day 2, the magic was already fading. The peace, it dipped. I started sweating again. My focus was shakier. I felt a little irritable. And by day 3, I was in a full-on mood dip, less productive. I argued with my parents. My stomach hurt. I sweated like I was doing hot yoga in a fucking phone booth. So do you know what we did? We upped the dose to 10 milligram, which gave me another spike of clarity, but with it came a harder crash. The come down was like getting unplugged from life. One moment I'd feel invincible, the next I was empty, hollow, tired in my bones. Then after that, from maybe, day 6 to 10, I was dancing a tango with 10 milligrams, sometimes twice a day. There were good days, I got work done, I went on walks, I even started smoking less weed. But I also got headaches and I felt nauseous. My lips started twitching. And once I thought I was going blind for 12 seconds, and I genuinely Googled temporary vision loss stimulant meds while having a minor existential crisis. And then we were going through the gears pretty quick. By the second week, I hit 15 milligram, and holy shit. One morning I took it and I just spiraled. I was anxious, angry, borderline panicked. I felt like I was vibrating out of my skin. I couldn't focus, I couldn't sit still, I couldn't be. And then 2 hours later, I crashed. I was weak, foggy, nauseous. I felt like a ghost of a person who might once have had a routine. I had this one moment standing in the kitchen where I thought, is this what it feels like to go crazy? Or is it just me on medication trying to feel normal? I tried walking it off. I tried drinking water. I even tried meditating. And listen, meditating while your brain is doing the Macarena is not peaceful. It's comedy. 15 milligram. That dose was intense. Like some mornings I'd take it and feel like my brain had been doused in gasoline and set on fire, metaphorically of course. Everything was too much. Lights, sounds, people breathing near me. I'd be restless, anxious, low-key furious for no reason. And then 2 hours later, I'd crash into the floor. Emotionally and physically, couldn't move, couldn't think. Just kind of stared at the wall. It's a weird thing to say, but sometimes I missed the chaos. At least then I could feel something. On 15 milligram, I often felt like I was living on mute, disconnected from myself. My body was here, but my mind, somewhere else entirely. And I want to share one of the lowest points. Around day 30, I broke down. And I mean fully. On all fours in the shower, sobbing, apologizing to myself, saying, I kept saying, I'm sorry for putting us through this. I felt like I didn't want to be here. not necessarily in a suicidal way, but just I didn't want to feel this way anymore. The exhaustion was the exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was soul deep. It was existential fatigue. I remember that night I wrote, I am tired in my soul. And I meant it. But then I don't know, somehow I had a beautiful evening. I laughed, I slept well. It was like the weather changed in my mind. ADHD meds, ladies and gentlemen. The emotional weather app with zero accuracy. And, I found every day I was asking myself, is this working? And the answer changed, sometimes hour to hour. Some days were great. I cleaned, I worked. I didn't need weed to calm down. Other days, I was flat. I was stuck. I was anxious for hours, hyper aware of my heartbeat, or crying without really knowing why. I'd read the side effects and think, oh, okay, cool, yeah, this is normal. And then my brain would go, or maybe we're dying. It's like living with a dramatic roommate who screams every time the toaster pops. And yeah, here's the thing about Medanef. It's short acting. That meant splitting my daily intake into 2, sometimes even 3 doses a day. I'd take one in the morning, then another early afternoon, and sometimes a smaller one later just to carry me through the evening. And while that might sound manageable in theory, in practice, it meant planning my entire day around when I could take my meds and how I had to prepare for each one. I needed to be fueled before each dose, food in the stomach, water in the system. Otherwise, the side effects hit harder. Nausea, jitters, anxiety. So even basic tasks started to revolve around timing my body to the pill. And it reminded me of something I didn't want to admit at first. It reminded me of when I used to plan my day around smoking weed. Only now, instead of joints, it was pills. I wasn't chasing the high exactly, but I was waiting for something to kick in, watching the clock, counting down the minutes until I could feel okay again. There were days I felt like a prisoner, not to the meds necessarily, but to my brain on the meds. The highs were high, the crashes were brutal, and when it wore off hard. And in those low moments, I found myself desperate for the next hit of relief. I know I touched on it on my last episode, but it still doesn't make sense to me how do you hand someone who's in recovery from substance abuse a medication that feels eerily similar to getting ready for a night out at a rave? Glow sticks obviously not included, but the bodily intensity, the anticipation, the crash, all familiar. That contradiction never sat right. It still doesn't. And so I started experimenting. 15 in the morning, 15 in the afternoon, then adding 5 milligram in the evening, and then it was 10, 10, 5. I was basically my own pharmacist at this point. I wouldn't recommend it, but sometimes it helped, sometimes it didn't. But I was desperate to make it work. I didn't want to give up. I wanted to win, like I was in a competition with my own brain. Looking back, that was the real problem. I was trying to fix myself instead of understanding myself. And my body did not love Medanef at all. I keep repeating it, but I got nauseous every day. The jaw tension that made me sound like I was chewing gravel when I spoke. Weird headaches behind my right eye, bloating, dry mouth. The infamous internal trembling. And then let's talk about the appetite. I was either ravenous or had zero interest in food. No in between. Sometimes I'd forget to eat. Then be furious about something and realize, oh yeah, I haven't eaten in 7 hours. Add on the constant feeling of being too hot for no reason, like my skin forgot how to regulate temperature. Cool, no pun intended. Eventually it became too much. I started noticing this weird anticipation anxiety before taking each dose. Like, my body would tense up even before the pill hit my tongue. And if anything, felt slightly off afterwards, slight nausea, a tight chest. Even a thought that spiraled, I'd panic fully. It's hard to explain, but I think part of it was the act of taking a pill itself. Something about it just triggered all those old memories. The nights I pushed things too far, the moments I thought this might be it, that I'd done something irreversible, that fate, God, the universe, whoever is going to decide whether I make it through the night or not. That helpless feeling of knowing you're not in control anymore and just hoping you're allowed another chance. That scared me. Medanef, it started to wake that fear back up. The fear of losing control, the fear of getting high and not knowing if I'd come back down in one piece. And when you're taking a pill that's meant to help, but your body is bracing like you're about to go on a bender, it does something to you. It makes it impossible to relax. You start to dread the things that's supposed to give you relief. Eventually, just swallowing the tablet became its own form of anxiety. But the hardest part, the emotions. I cried more in those 50 days than I had in years. Full breakdowns, in the shower, in the kitchen, at my desk. Once I dropped a fork and sobbed like I'd just lost a pet. I wasn't just emotional, I was raw. Like all my skin had been peeled back and the world was touching my nerves. And yet I kept taking the meds, hoping maybe tomorrow would be the day they clicked, that magical alignment. And then day 50 happened. Day 50 on Medanef. Day 50 was the end. Day 50 broke me. I'd already had a rough couple of days. Anxiety, racing thoughts, weird sensations in my body. That morning, my spike was intense, and I tried to push through. I carried on as normal. I went to the nurse for my usual checkups, saw my heart rate, spun out, came home and broke. I couldn't get that number out of my head. 108, resting heart rate, 108. That isn't healthy, surely. My heart can't be doing that all the time. It took me back to a moment when I was doing aid work in Rwanda, and I suffered a tachycardia. And I remember back then lying outside, telling the nurse who was with us, please don't let me die. Not here. Not like this. And then I broke mentally and physically. I collapsed on the floor. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. That night again, I said aloud, I can't do this anymore. Not just the meds, the pretending, the fight to make something work that clearly wasn't working. And in that breakdown, I found clarity. I needed a new path. I needed to stop managing symptoms. I needed to start listening to myself. And later on that evening, thankfully, my girlfriend, she came over and she helped ground me. But I knew in my gut that this medication, as much as I wanted it to work, it wasn't the right one for me. And then some days I had dark thoughts, not dangerous ones necessarily, but despairing ones. Like, what if this is just it? What if this is my baseline? What if I'm just anxious, confused, emotional, tired, disconnected? What if that's just who I am? But every time that thought came, I tried to meet it with compassion. And I'd say to myself, this is hard, but you're not broken. You're just learning. And sometimes you have to love yourself enough to say, I deserve to feel better than this. I think that's what ADHD treatment really is. A lesson in patience, in letting go of control, in learning to hold space for the weird, jagged parts of yourself. And let me tell you, when you start to love those jagged parts, even a little, that's when healing actually begins. Now, it wasn't all bad. There were days I felt alive, creative, productive, present. Those were beautiful little victories. I remember one afternoon I spent potting plants. No phone, no music, just me, soil, sun, and stillness. I felt grounded, human, safe. I had deep conversations where I stayed connected. I hugged someone and actually felt it. I felt connected to people. I had great chats, honest moments, real laughter. Those were sacred. And those moments mattered. They reminded me that I wasn't broken. I was just misaligned. And I could still access peace. And I danced in my room for no reason. I listened to old music and cried because it felt like the first time I'd actually heard it. And then you start to learn to cherish those fragments. Even if they last 10 minutes, they remind you that this is possible. You can feel okay. You can have peace. Now, Medanef didn't fail me, and I didn't fail it. It just wasn't the right fit. Sometimes things aren't meant to work out, and that's okay. I learned so much during those 50 days about my resilience, about my capacity for hope, about the way I've been trained to ignore my own discomfort in the name of functioning. And this med taught me to listen. It taught me that stability doesn't mean flatness, that peace doesn't mean absence of feeling, that being calm isn't the same as being numb. If you're listening to this and you're in the middle of your own medication journey, maybe you're where I was, or you're trying to make a square peg fit into a circular brain, I want to say this. You're not weak for struggling. You're not a failure for being sensitive. You're not broken, and you are not dramatic for having a hard time. And you are absolutely not alone. You are worthy of stability. You are worthy of a life that feels good more often than it doesn't. You are worthy of laughing without overthinking it, of waking up without dread, of being seen and loved in your full weirdness. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of peace. You're trying, you're learning, you're doing the incredibly hard, incredibly brave work of finding what helps you. This process, it isn't linear. It's not easy, but it is worth it. Because on the other side of all the chaos is understanding, insight, a deeper relationship with yourself. That is powerful, that is valid, and that is enough. And if you ever find yourself sobbing over a thought, just know, I've been there, and you're not alone. But until then, be gentle, cry if you need to, laugh when you can. Your brain isn't broken, it's just built for a different rhythm. And remember, be good to yourself. That was part one of this medication journey. Medanef gave me insight, it gave me humility, it gave me a whole new definition of what it means to try. Thank you for sticking with me through this one. Part two will be all about Elvance, a different experience altogether. Just a quick one. Just want to say again, thanks for listening. Your support, honestly, it means a lot. I'd appreciate that if you wouldn't mind leaving a 5-star review. It really would help the podcast. But no pressure. But more importantly, if you feel this story could help someone, please share it. Spread the love. And let people know that they're not alone.